Hey guys, today we have a story about a Girl Scout camp in Iowa that had a series of strange and really frightening encounters that even led to the police coming out on a number of occasions. That's next. Okay guys, we have our little Halloween special tonight, and it's really fitting because we have a full moon overhead, and off to my right this way there's an owl that's been going off, and I've heard this owl a number of nights. I'm actually in my base camp backyard tonight, and we have the buddy heater that's really warming the tent up for me. I really like that. That's making a difference for me. And tonight's beer, we have Rogue Pumpkin Patch Ale, and this is brewed with roasted pumpkins. Check that out. That's from the Rogue Brewing Company. Pretty fitting for this time of year. So I got to admit, when I first tried this beer, pumpkins, a vegetable beer, it just tasted terrible, and it's just kind of this pumpkin-y aftertaste. Really kind of hard to describe until you taste it, but yeah, I've gotten used to it. I've had a couple of them, so. But one tonight. There we go. Yeah, it's just really hard to get used to. Roasted pumpkin ale. Wow. Yeah, I guess once a year, so cheers. So our story takes place in 1959 near the town of Dubuque, Iowa. West of there's a small town called Graff, Iowa, and then north of there is a camp, a Girl Scout camp called Camp Little Cloud. And there, in 1959, Mary got a job as a full counselor. The previous 2 summers, she had been a counselor in training, and she finally got a job that she wanted. So it was August, the first day of the 3rd and final camp session. The girls are dropped off by the parents. They were escorted down to their tents, and their tents were platform tents, which means they had a wooden platform with a canvas tent on top. This is really helpful for when it rains. The water goes right through. It's a little bit warmer because you're not sleeping on the ground, and it's very stable. The girls unpacked. They were getting settled in, getting to know each other. They went and had dinner. It was becoming dusk, and Mary needed to get up to the lodge. She took this small path through the forest, and it came to this clearing, this opening, with a slight slope up towards their craft hut. Standing next to the craft hut, she saw this dark figure standing in the shadows to the left of the craft hut in the forest. She didn't know what to make of it. Okay, today's sponsor is Huge Casino. It's a great online gaming app. You can download it for free on iOS, Android, Facebook, and Amazon. There's over 100 different online casino games to play. There's retro classics to slot games, blackjack to poker. Buffalo Rush is my favorite slot game. There's even a Stampede. I love the graphics on these games. Irish Dream, if you're feeling lucky. And Queen of Egypt, she's ruling the roost. There's big wins, free games, and lots of fun. You can join a club and play your friends, or create your own team and make new friends. These games do not offer real money gambling. They're for entertainment purposes only. They're a lot of fun. So download Huge Casino from the link in the description below, and you'll have a lot of fun, and with your friends. She continued on to the lodge. She asked the director, why hadn't the parents all left yet? And he said, all the parents have left. And so they were concerned there was an intruder on the property. So they called the sheriff's department. 2 deputies came out, investigated, cleared the area. They found nothing. There was nothing further they could do. Later that evening, Mary and her co-counselor, Beth, got the kids settled down, got them ready for bed, told them a few stories, awesome for stories, and got him off to sleep. They both crawled into their sleeping bags, just about to fall asleep, and they both could hear some loud walking down the gravel lane through the camp. And they could hear this crunching sound. Mary thought it was the camp director checking on the girls to make sure they were all quiet. And he was a big guy. In fact, his name was Big Daddy, so they didn't think much of it. The next morning, Mary and Beth got the girls up and got them up to the lodge for breakfast. It was really noisy in the lodge. Girls were excited. They're all having breakfast. And Mary casually walked up to the table where the camp director was at. She said, "Good morning. I heard you walking last night, checking on us, make sure we're okay." And he looked at her and he said, "That was not me. I was not out last night." And she said, "Well, I heard someone walking real big down the gravel path that runs through camp last night." He goes, "I assure you that was definitely not me." Again, they called the deputies. They didn't come out, they just made a note of it. So the next night, Mary and Beth got the girls off to sleep again, crawled into their sleeping bags, but this time Mary was really apprehensive, really concerned about what she assumed she heard versus what was possibly really out there. She had no idea. So she got herself a baseball bat earlier that day, had it laying in her next to her sleeping bag. She got it from the craft hut, and she also had her rosary. They're about ready to fall asleep, and they again hear this heavy walking down this gravel lane through the camp. Walks right by their tent and is heading for the campers' tents. Really concerning. The next morning, the girls were even talking about this from the other tents. They said, "We heard something walking around our tent. We felt a little scared." And Mary and Beth were both telling them, trying to assure them it was forest animals, it was very natural, not to be afraid, because they didn't want the girls to be scared, because they didn't even know what was going on. They continued to call the sheriff's department, and the deputies would come out, and they did this for 7 days. Every morning they would call them, and the deputies would come out and investigate, and then they would find nothing. So it was the last day of camp. It felt really off. Kind of weird almost. The girls had all packed and were leaving. Even the counselors were leaving, and the director was packing to go. That afternoon, the director was packing and then came back to his tent to finish the job, and he found that his clothes were thrown all over the tent. His alarm clock was smashed and his chair was flipped over. Again, they called the sheriff's department, and 2 deputies came out, and they were more concerned not about his stuff, but that there was an intruder that was continually messing with these people at this camp. So the deputies thought it was best to spend the night there with them, give them the best shot to possibly catch this intruder. Mary and Beth went back to their platform tent, spend the last night. Girls are all gone. Got into sleeping bags, were falling asleep, and again they heard the footsteps, just the same as before. Passed their tent and went down the lane, and they waited, and they knew they needed to get out of the tent and go up to the main lodge and let the deputies know what they had heard. So they got out of the tent, went down the little stairs, and they found the path through the forest. It was a moonlit night. They could see really well. They were really afraid, but they knew they had to do what they had to do. They got to the lodge, told the deputies what they had heard. He's back. He's out there. There's somebody walking around again. And the deputies accompanied them back to their tent, were looking around, and they were discussing the situation. And they suddenly heard from the forest And down where the farthest tent was in the camp, this loud, horrific scream. Very frightening. And it had this almost a primal rage to it. They moved towards this sound to investigate. Just moments later, they heard this loud tree branch breaking sound, this cracking sound. They went into the forest to investigate, and they found this large tree branch broken completely off a mature maple tree. Laying on the ground, it was 6-7 inches around, and they looked up with their flashlights, and they could see the break in the tree, and it was 7 or 8 feet high. They're standing there with the flashlights looking at this tree break. They hear this horrific scream a second time. It's now down the path and then down this slope in the forest towards this pond. They know there was a pond down there. The 2 deputies went down the path into the forest to investigate. They were down there less than a minute, and they returned because they were afraid. They heard it down there making this racket in the forest. And they just thought, there's no way they're going to go down there and take care of this thing. The 2 deputies came back, and they're standing there with the flashlights talking to Mary and Beth. And again, they heard this scream for the 3rd time. This time, it was deep in the forest, far away, and it was along the stream that ran through the valley. The deputies did not go and investigate this time. They said, maybe it's best you guys get your gear and let's get you up to the lodge for the night. Mary's back at the lodge. She's feeling safe. She's laying in bed and she's thinking about all of this. And she's thinking that whoever or whatever this intruder was, it could easily navigate the dark forest at night, the thick heavy brush, and the steep dirt cliffs that went down to the creeks. And it could move from spot to spot really quickly. She had no idea what this was until 1967 she saw footage of the Patterson-Gimlin film of the Bigfoot. And it made sense to her that most likely this is what she had experienced and the camp had experienced in 1959. Mary also believed that this intruder or Bigfoot was using the stream to travel because all of the screams could be heard near the creek. The next spring, Mary got a call from the Girl Scout office asking if she'd like to be a counselor again at the camp. Mary was very decisive and she said no because of what had happened the summer before. And she explained that to the person on the phone, and she said, oh, and she kind of laughed. She said the prowler had been caught. Turns out it was a deaf person that was mentally challenged and was living on a farm, and they caught him. So there was nothing to worry about. And Mary said, if it was a deaf person, how could they scream so loudly? And she didn't have an answer to that. And she said, also, how could this person move so efficiently through the forest at night? And she didn't really have an answer for that. And they kind of wrapped it up, ended the phone call. Mary thought about it, and she thought, she's and the camp are saying this to quiet the parents and keep this under wraps. They didn't want to lose business, most likely. She also noticed there was no publicity about that event from the Girl Scout camp or the police department, the sheriff's department. And Mary mentioned that this screams from this thing, this potential Bigfoot, had this horrible disappointment. And she wondered if it was because the campers were no longer at Camp Little Cloud. And that is our story for Halloween. All right, that was a good story. I like a good camp story. And that was a true camp story about kids and camp and Halloween. So you got to check out my hat tonight. I got a, I don't know if you can read that, but it says Camp Crystal Lake. Isn't that great? Okay, so I am still hearing Mr. Owl out this way. It's pretty fun. And because it's Halloween and everybody likes candy, I have a top 10 list right here of the least favorite candies for Halloween. This is what you don't want in your bag when you're trick-or-treating. Top 10 list here. Number 10, Bitto Squirrel. Number 9, Poisonettes. Number 8, Good and Sweaty. You definitely don't want that. Number 7, Middle Finger. Number 6, Reese's Feces. That's terrible. That's terrible. Number 5, Baby Runt. Number 4, Bit O' Money. I kind of like that one. Number 3, Milky Way. You gotta like a Milky Way. Everyone likes a Milky Way. Number 2, Milk Duds. That goes well on Halloween. And number 1 least favorite candy on Halloween, Osmond Joy. So there you go. Had to do that. All right, you guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And make sure you like and subscribe and all that fun. You guys know how to do that. And if you like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the night, please do subscribe. And I'm going to have a lot of fun with this going forward. There's a lot of things I want to do. So, all right. Thanks for watching, you guys. Happy Halloween. And we will see you on the next one. Keep hiking.